Um, looking through the pages of this book, there's a lot of lessons to be learned on the history of Grand Rapids. What can the people of Grand Rapids in the metro area, learn about the present civil rights issues by taking a look at the past?
Well, I think the past can't help us at the present. I always admit that. I'm a historian. I could tell you about 100 years ago. I'm not sure. I'm not a seer. I don't see into the into the future. So what it can tell is, look, we have patterns. Anytime you are doing yourself any self-analysis, you look at the patterns in your life and you say, which ones do I need to change? Which one do I need to change so that I can not repeat those things over and over again? I may make other mistakes, but I won't make those. And this book tries to say, here's a pattern. This is why it comes about. And maybe, just maybe, we can have a discussion about this particular pattern in our city, which not only affects African Americans, but affects any visible minority, as soon as that minority gets to be quite visible and cohesive.
So a lot of people say that African American, Latino issues are everyone issues.
Yeah, they are. But you want to look at African Americans, in one sense, are unique as an American ethnic group. And here's the uniqueness. When African Americans moved into Grand Rapids when it was becoming a city, they had been in America longer than most European ethnic groups. The great wave of European ethnic community coming into Grand Rapids came between 1880 and the First World War. Big boom. African Americans were here before, people of African descent were here before it was the United States. And then after it became the United States, they were here without the same benefits as new European ethnic communities coming in. So that's a kind of unique situation, and one that we have to discuss all over, because in many ways that changes the dynamics. So African Americans have been people who have had to fight for the right to be citizens in the country that they were born in. I mean, the Civil War said if you're born in the country, at the end of the Civil War, if you're born in the country, you're a U.S. citizen. Well, that came as a result of there were 4 million people who were former slaves, by law, had no citizenship. So we have to talk about those things. That's not to blame anybody. I don't blame anybody. I was born when I was born. You were born when you were born. But I think that we do have to have that discussion.
Certainly. The topic, the title of this show is Civil Rights, Past, Present, and Future. I'd like your take on, what has happened in the past generation as far as civil rights goes. The first thing a lot of people think of is the struggle in the 50s and 60s. Right. What does the current generation have to do? What are the priorities for the current generation?
Well, let's first of all, see what the priorities were for that past generation. The civil rights movement, as we know it, didn't start in the 50s. It really started, as we know it, about 1909. The NAACP was founded in 1909. And that's a law. Martin Luther King was born 20 years later. So the civil rights movement, the agenda was to gain access to schooling, to gain access to a fair treatment when you're going into a public facility, to gain access to protection of the law. That's what they were attempting to do.
You mentioned Martin Luther King, of course. Recently, Coretta Scott King passed away, leaving behind a great legacy with her. Could you give your thoughts on the passing of Coretta Scott King?
Yeah, well, Mrs. King was quite a strong woman. And it's a deep loss of a generation. People forget that they were a young couple when they started out with the expectations of buying a house, starting a career, moving on, developing, raising your kids together, and they're swept up in the winds of history. And she continued that struggle, to continue the struggle of the civil rights generation. That one began in the NAACP in 1909 and continued into the 50s. Now to your second point about what's the generation today. Well, I think that the generations today have to continue to build on that legacy. The civil rights, more lawsuits were fought over education. So we have to get people in school, to school, and have schools serve them. That was one of the things that I think is important. I think the other most important thing in a city like ours is school is tied to how you perceive economic opportunity. Now, the perception of Grand Rapids being a closed city means that people won't try as hard because they don't think that there's a viable opportunity for them. Or if they do seek out opportunity, they'll head elsewhere with their talents. So economic opportunity is tied to the educational piece immensely. And the last thing that I think African Americans in particular have to do is to exercise that great power and leadership in this city and elsewhere that we possess.
One of the things you do touch on in your book is political representation.
Right.
Do you think the African American community in Grand Rapids, and the state of Michigan for that matter, is being represented adequately?
Well, that's a hot potato. Yes and no. I would like to see more people take up issues that are representative of African Americans, and those are issues that are represented by everybody. And I don't think largely we have some great firsts. Let me say, I was very happy to see Senator Bill Hardeman elected as a state senator here in Grand Rapids, but it's a first. I'm very happy on the City Council of Grand Rapids. There are 2 African Americans on the City Council of Grand Rapids.